Hi everyone, I hope you are all very well and had a lovely summer. I'm now back. It's the Tuesday, 6th of September, and I think this video will be coming out in a couple of weeks. So we had a little trip, first time since 2019. We went on the airplane and it was great to be able to swim in the sea and enjoy a proper beach and fresh seafood, and it just was gorgeous. So we went to Croatia, and it was my first time in Croatia. I heard loads of lovely things, especially lately, and yes, it was quite good. I think I would happily return again, but today I wanted to share something with you. So since we came back yesterday, we came actually a few days ago, but yesterday I sat at my desk and I thought I actually feel quite inspired, and I feel like my batteries have been recharged, and I wanted to embark upon a project that I had in mind for a long time. But I mentioned this before going away, that I wanted to swatch out my Roman Szmal watercolors. And if you haven't seen this video, I'll try to link it up here, where I briefly showed the palette that I made up and spray painted. So this is actually a Derwent pencil tin, and it works really beautifully because you can fit. So if I had a little pan or full pan here, it would have been 66 full pans, but also you can fit another 6 in here, so up to 72 full pans go inside this this tin, and as you can see, they fit perfectly. I have adjusted or touched them with magnets as well, and so that works perfectly. So what I've done so far is I'm trying to organize the color range. So just to recap quickly, I have basically arranged them in the order that they come. So all of these colors have a number, and the numbers, however, are kind of sort of all over the place, and therefore the arrangement of the colors in this palette doesn't really work for me. So you can see it's all over the place, and so for me to be able to sort them out, I thought I'll start with these like individual swatch cards where I put the name, and then I have the transparency up here, pigment and light fastness. I remembered actually, I think Jane Blundell, correct me if I'm wrong, but she has a fantastic database of pretty much most watercolors available, and I wonder if she's listing light fastness on there. So that would save me a lot of time to, you know, to do my own tests, I think, because looking at it now, testing all of the watercolors, I don't know how many years that would take, because you obviously have to display them, and although I have enough windowsills, it just would be a mess. So I might check that out just to fill in the light fastness information. So here's what I've done so far. I have swatched the first, let's see, yes, I've done these 5 rows. So I have a blank here because I actually had swatched goethite twice. So that's why I had to take it out, and there is a blank there. But there are a couple of colors that I want to add, and so that gives me another 7 colors here to finish off this palette. But I will be picking carefully, because once I've done that, I won't have any space to add any more colors into this palette. And then this row is left, so I thought maybe we'll do that together today, so you can actually see how I'm doing the swatches. And here is how I'm actually planning to store them. This is the idea I have for now. Is like this in a basket, and I will separate the warms and the cools into 2 groups, and once I have swatched out my entire watercolor collection, I think that it should be enough. If not, I have another basket and I could then separate them into kind of 4 groups or something like that. So just to remind you, the warm colors go from here down to here, and the cool colors go from here down to here. So for instance, if we take this color, it probably would be within the warms, I would say, not the cools. And then if we take this color, it would be within the cools. And so then I would be kind of, and then I would arrange them obviously in color groups. And if I wanted to find a specific yellow, I'd go quickly through my yellows and then my kind of other colors. So that's the idea. Also, what I really like is I will finally be able to see exactly the color that I need. I will be able to find that exact color, because quite often I have a color in mind, but I just cannot be bothered to spend 20 minutes looking through everything, swatching out the exact right color. I just sort of pull out something and just go with it. But this will make my life so much easier. Also, the fact that I can, in such a quick proximity of time, just find the pigment information. I can see, for instance, how the colors are mixed amongst different brands as well. If I like a certain color but in different brands, I can see that. I can see the transparency. Everything that I need to know would be on this one card, and I think it's just super, super neat. Now, if you're new to this channel, you may not know, but I have created these swatch cards with my own stamp set. So this is the Swatch Joy, and I can confirm that they're definitely coming back in stock, and I think by the time this video comes out, they might not yet be on my Etsy shop, but soon after, maybe within a week or 2 maximum after this video, but I'll update you anyhow. So what you get in the Swatch Joy is a couple of fun elements. There's some videos where I'm using those if you want some inspo. And so this element is what I have been using for the swatch cards. I left it open so that you can make your own decisions and build your own, whichever swatch card you want, do the arrangement whichever way you want. So for instance, if you wanted to do the strip somewhere along here or along there, if you wanted to swatch from here, going from left to right, you could do that. I personally prefer from the top down to the bottom, and then you have different things like date. So if you wanted to do your own light fastness or just date your artwork, there's pigment info, light fastness, transparency, granulation, and that. So for granulation, what I tend to do, I find flat swatches a little bit boring. Let's just keep it amongst us. But I tried and I just don't find them as beautiful. So what I do is, once I've done my flat swatch, I create texture by dropping droplets of water here, and that will give me enough info about granulation. So quite often you can see granulation already. But the drops just highlight the granulation ever so slightly. So instead of stamping granulation and writing the info there, I just use it this way. And again, transparency, you could do either transparency and write your own info, or I like to use the strip. With the strip, you just need to get used to it. So what I do is I stamp on one side, stamp on the other side, then stamp second time, and then in the middle I stamp the 5th time, which does take a little bit of time. But I have tried with a fat Sharpie and it didn't look great. In fact, if I didn't throw them away, I'll show you. So here is the example. So the fat Sharpie ends up being so thick that you have very little space left. It's probably faster, but it won't be as uniform. So here is comparison. Because it's also thinner, what you need to do is obviously not fill up most of the space. You need to see how transparent it is. So you need to see the comparison of the white paper as well. So yeah, I tried with Sharpie just to see if it would be faster and easier, and I ended up going back to my stamp. So that's that. That's what I have done, and I will show you the process how I do it now with a few colors, and then I think we should have hopefully enough time for me to arrange the colors just by layering them all on the table and find the right sort of color arrangement for my liking. And obviously you could do it how you like to arrange your colors, but what helps the most is, instead of kind of doing these individual swatches which you would need to redo, here you have them ready. All you need to do is just to shuffle them in the right order, and it's really easy in my opinion. Before we start with the swatching, just quickly again, I wanted to refer to the Aquarius leaflet here. So this is where I get the pigment info. All of the pigments are stated in here, and that way it's kind of easy. Some of the pigments are not, I think there's a couple of newer colors which are not in this booklet, although it says here new colors, but there have been even newer colors added to the range. So those you'd need to, or the way I do it is I go to Jackson's and look in the information there. In a very on a very rare occasion, like with the Goified and Aquarius Orange, so far only those two colors, there is no information at all, and it just says earth pigment. But there are also loads of other earth pigments that do have a pigment number there, so I'm not entirely sure how that works, but yeah, you may come across a situation where it will have just earth pigment there. Alright, so let's start with the swatches. So here is the paper that I use. This is Jackson's, I believe it's a rough watercolor block. It's very thick. I think it's 300 GSM, and I'll try to link it down below. It comes in different formats. I've got one more sheet of paper left on this block, but I also have a bigger format which I'm intending to use for the other watercolor stamps. And then here's what I do. So basically I stamp 2 rows of 5, and then I have 1, 2 and 3 left this way, if that makes sense. So 1, 2, 3, and then I am left with a small card like this, which I keep for swatches, or if I wanted to try something out randomly, and I never have any of those cards to hand. So first I swatch, or I stamp rather, the frame. So this is my well-used and well-loved stamp set, so I use this frame here to do those stamps. Then I cut them up into individual cards, and for that, best thing to do, which is fastest and neatest, is one of those slicers. Now this one literally cost me I think 2 or 3 quid. It's from Hobbycraft, and it does a good job so far. I mean, it's thick paper, but it's holding up quite well, and I don't mind if it breaks, so I'm not using my more expensive Fisker slicers. And so once I have all cut them up nicely, I then go in with stamping these elements right here. So typically I would start with the bottom so that I find it less confusing. So I'd go light fastness and stamp all of them. I find it easier to have them all kind of on one block, but once you have stamped one, if you only have one block, move on to the next stamp. It really doesn't matter, but I just have them all layered out like that. So yes, first one, light fastness at the bottom. Next one, pigment over the top, and then again over the top of that I do the line. So I've done the light fastness and the pigment stamps, and now we'll show you how I do the transparency strip here. Also, you would need to get a waterproof ink, and my ink of choice is archival ink. I bought this, God, probably 5-6 years ago, and since I just had to buy this re-inker, it's jet black, and then just re-ink it, and there are still loads in the bottle, so it really is great because you're not throwing it out and, you know, not polluting. So that's that. One more thing to say, the first ever stamp I have done, I just wanted to show you how different you could get it. So that's the first one I've done, and I actually, let me find another color to show you. I actually prefer it down here, I realized, because that way the name is kind of separating them, and I then have the pigment and the light fastness. I don't know why, but it sits better in my brain rather than having all the information at the bottom. It kind of gets a little bit muddled up, and it takes a few seconds to go through all of that. But yeah, so this is how I'm doing it. Again, you do you, whatever suits you. That's the whole purpose of the stamp set, for you to build your own swatches. Okay, so let's do the transparency strip. So what I do is basically make sure it's really saturated. A couple of times might not be enough. So for your first strip, do it a few times. Also go around on your stamping block or your ink block, and make sure you move it around, because sometimes ink can dry up in one area because you keep on going in the same area, and then it's not enough. So that's the key for the first one. Then make sure you can see right above it. I'll try to do it with the camera, it's a bit tricky, but right above it, and make sure you kind of stamp in the middle, and then just sort of wiggle it a little bit, and that's your stamping image. And then I'll do next one next to it. It doesn't matter if they don't touch, it doesn't matter if they overlap a little bit, you know, I'm not too strict about it. So here is your one line. You could totally leave it at that if you don't want to be, you know, kind of trying to perfect it as I do. But here's how I do it. And you can do either the first version or you can do how I prefer to do them. So then I go second time over. As you can see, that makes it a bit more intense and crisper. Because also remember, I am using a rough watercolor paper, so it won't stamp as perfectly as it would on flat paper or like a smooth paper. So again, I could leave it at that. Sometimes I also like to put a fifth strip, but again, you might find it excessive and unnecessary. So, but this is how I connect the two and make sort of hardly a visible line in the middle. So again, do it your own way, or here is how I do it. I'll go ahead and prepare the remaining cards with the transparency strip, and then I'll show you how I do the actual swatches. Alright, so I am back. I have now stamped all of them. It's actually quite a therapeutic thing if you need to do loads of the colors. So I will do one card just to show you how I do it, and I will do the Cobalt Sea Blue, which is this beautiful color here. So I start with the large swatch first. So I've done these swatches in different ways, and the way that I'll show you today or now is the way that I felt I enjoyed the most. So I basically do my swatch like that, about halfway. Then I add a bit of water to my brush and then just pull out the color, and that way I have a lovely gradient. Sometimes if I feel that it's not light enough, I go back. Sometimes if I feel I want to add a bit more darkness or intensity, I tend to do that as well. And at this point I'll just leave it. I always use a rag to control my water. And then I take a bit of the color with very little water, so quite saturated, and go about halfway as well, a bit less than halfway, and wash my brush. And at this point I don't want to have too much water, so I'm just going to pull out the color. And this sometimes takes a little bit of time, so you want it to be kind of light at the end, sort of medium in the center, and quite a bit of it here, because that's going to show you the transparency of it. Then I tend to write the name. So that's the Roman Szmal. And it's the Cobalt Sea Blue. Cobalt Sea Blue. And before it dries, but I do give it a little bit of time before doing the drops, I wet my brush and then just touch it in the right side of my swatch, and this is what creates these lovely kind of blossoming effects. So I'll show you on an example here, so you can see a bit more solid here, and then there's a play of the colors. So that's how I sort of tend to do it. Then I refer to the booklet and I find a Cobalt Sea Blue, which is the new color, and it says here PB28. PB28, and that's it. And I let it dry, and I don't touch it anymore. I don't play around with it, and that's how I do the swatches. So I'll go ahead now and I'll finish all of them, and then I will come back and we'll try to arrange the color palette for my Roman Szmal palette.